I was going through some declassified material that about around that time frame, and Chairman or Congressman Solarz at the time in 1985 had traveled to Pakistan and met with General Zia. He had also met with Munir Khan, who was the chairman of the Atomic Agency, and basically had threatened that America would cut off aid to Pakistan if they continued with their nuclear program. And this is something I want to quote. Munir Khan at that time told Congressman Solarz that when confronted with the termination of aid from the US, they said, Pakistan said, it would, in quote, seek an accommodation in Afghanistan, essentially saying that they would then seek Russia's help. So, how,
Wait, Russia's help with what?
for whatever help, seek Russia's help with either their nuclear program or it's not clear over here, but it clearly said seek an accommodation in Afghanistan. My question here being, was he aware, Chairman Solarz, during this testimony, that whatever came out of that congressional hearing could threaten to derail the American sort of aid to Pakistan at that time in combating the Soviets?
You mean the hearing that I testified at?
Yes.
Oh, there's an entire chapter about that hearing and the Pervez case in Charlie Wilson's work. There was a huge battle. I mean, there were very, 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 very serious moves that went on till 3 a.m. to terminate aid to Pakistan on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Yeah.
Tell us more about that, because I'm sure a lot of people haven't read it or don't remember it.
Yeah, the chapter, I remember the chapter. It's called The Jihad to Remember, in the middle of Charlie Wilson's work. Yeah. In the book, Charlie Wilson's work, and I knew George Kreil, who was a 60 Minutes producer, who was, one of Charlie Wilson and the DO's biggest fans, what was I going to say? The nuclear issue is all over the book because it was a major part of our relationship with Pakistan. When I forget the name of the screenwriter who did the movie.
Yes.
It's completely gone.
It's not mentioned at all.
Not mentioned at all. Right. That's
So
Hollywood for you.
tell us about the deliberations that happened about cutting aid off, because I know that a package of F-16s were also going to be sold to the Pakistanis at the time, around that time.
Well, that was later. That was later. That was when a couple of years later, when I was working for Cheney at the
we'll get to
Office
that.
of Secretary of Defense.
Tell me more about the deliberations that happened.
But there was a very large aid package. This was in 1987, as I recall, right? There was a very large aid package on the table, and the whole thing came this close, as described in the book, which, of course, that's Charlie Wilson talking in that book, right? But he kept them up until 4 a.m, and they finally relented. I mean, this is how things can work, But aid was going to be terminated. No, under the amendment, you have to keep in mind that in the amendment there is a waiver provision. The president can be triggered, terminated, and the president can do a national security waiver, which is what happened later on. I mean, after the hearing, right? Do you want to hear about that at this point?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, after the hearing, people, Einzel and people in the DO were trying to get me fired. This went on for months. It was awful. I didn't know whether I had a job. As I explained to you, there was a huge division, an epic battle between the DI and the DO on these issues. The Soviets versus the nuclear weapons, and I got caught up in the middle of all that, But while that was going on, while people were trying to fire me, I was assigned to assist the Justice Department with the Pervez case, to go through all the evidence they seized from his house, etc. And I worked on that for months to assist in the prosecution and on the Mandel case. And then we still have the Solarz Amendment to deal with for the first time. And I was assigned to work with the state legal advisor, the head lawyer at the State Department, Judge Abraham Sofair, and his deputy, Alan Cresco. And I provided all of the intelligence to him and the president for the triggering of the Solarz Amendment about the full range of Pakistan's clandestine nuclear procurement activities, not just the Pervez case, everything. And so the lawyers and the Secretary of State went through that and sent the package to the president, recommending that he basically had little choice but to trigger the amendment, which he did. The Solarz Amendment was triggered, aid was cut off to Pakistan, and in the next stroke of a pen, he signed the waiver that's contained in the law. There was, I mean, I was under no illusion that Ronald Reagan was going to terminate aid to Pakistan in the middle of the Afghan war with the Mujahideen, because he was a cold warrior. That's what he cared about. Like Charlie Wilson, like the people in the DO, you know. So it was never going to happen, but it brought out what the Pakistanis were up to in terms of they were moving ahead with their nuclear weapons program. They had massive clandestine procurement operations in the US and around the world. You know, just to be clear, most of what they were buying was not from the United States. It was in Europe, it was in Asia, etc. This was a very sophisticated network they had, you know, but this was all now out in the open, right? So it gave our diplomats the tools to now deal with the Pakistani government on these issues. It was leverage for them to use, but you know, we're not in charge of that in the CIA. We're not diplomats. We're intelligence people. That's up to people like Mike Armacost and stuff at the State Department and the Secretary of State. And you know, they took them to task briefly, but they never really came down on them. Looked the other way.
Slap on the wrist.
It was a slap on the wrist, basically.
Yeah.
Even though it was handed to them, I mean, it wasn't like, I mean, I was the one that took action, that organized the government to take action. That was the problem. Nobody was taking action, but that I was going to get a call that this Pakistani was trying to buy 25 tons of 350 grade Malaysian steel. I mean, I didn't set that up, you know. That was the result of the State Department's client, Pakistan, did that, not Richard. You understand? I just did what needed to be done to get him arrested and prosecuted. And whatever legal framework the Congress of the United States passed, it had to be dealt with within that legal framework. We did. And we did. That's how you handle things. And the president did his national security waiver. That's it.
To summarize essentially the late 80s over here, when you were active in the CIA, do you think Pakistan would have been able to get the nuclear bomb without sort of, in a way, I don't even want to call it American support, but it looks like that?
I mean, first of all, the Pakistanis never could have gotten the nuclear bomb without Khan stealing the centrifuge plants and the supplier list from Urenco. That's the number one problem right there. And that was not handled very well, you know. Khan should have been arrested back then, right away, when he stole the plans. And they could have. But according to the former prime minister of Holland that I was on a Japanese TV program with some years ago, around 2005, Ruud Lubbers was his name. He claimed that the CIA, they offered to arrest Khan back in I think it was the 70s, and the CIA told them not to. They wanted to watch him. And then he said again in 1986, Khan was back in the country, and they were told again not to arrest him. You know, so
You can't blame me for
yeah,
my
I
confusion
mean,
there.
I think the billions of dollars of U.S. military and covert aid. I mean, I think that probably there was a significant portion of it that was funneled off, knowing how Pakistan works, that may have helped to fund their nuclear program. But I also think the Saudis gave them quite a bit of money, etc.